Tens of thousands of people packed into a Glendale, Arizona stadium to pay their respects to right-wing activist Charlie Kirk, who was shot and killed during a public event in Utah earlier this month. Now, the speakers included President Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and several Republican officials. In an emotional moment in the event, Kirk's widow, Erika, vowed to carry out her husband's mission and said she forgives his alleged killer. CBS News correspondent Bradley Blackburn has more on this.
He wanted to save young men, just like the one who took his life.
During an emotional tribute, Erika Kirk told thousands of mourners she forgives the man accused of killing her husband, conservative activist Charlie Kirk.
The answer to hate is not hate. The answer we know from the gospel is love, and always love.
Moments later, President Trump took the stage and sounded a different note.
That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent, and I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry.
In his remarks, the president praised Charlie Kirk.
He's a martyr now for American freedom.
And veered into politics.
Tariffs are making us rich again. We're going to save Chicago.
The president was seen smiling and chatting with former advisor, billionaire Elon Musk, as top officials took to the stage, some issuing a call to action in Kirk's name.
For Charlie, we will rebuild this United States of America to greatness.
They cannot imagine what they have awakened.
27-year-old Arizona resident Harrison Stevens said the messages invigorated the crowd.
People are using the term like picking up the bloody microphone that Charlie left behind, and I think that Turning Point will definitely grow.
President Trump again said he plans to posthumously award Kirk the Presidential Medal of Freedom soon. Bradley Blackburn, CBS News, New York.
CBS News White House correspondent Natalie Brand joins us with more on all of this. Good morning, Natalie. You know, at moments during Sunday's memorial, it actually seemed more like a political rally. What more can you tell us about the president's remarks on social media about going after his political enemies, a message to the Attorney General?
Yeah, good morning, Errol. Well, let's start with what he said on stage, which was kind of striking because he said this is where he disagreed from Charlie Kirk. He said Charlie did not hate his opponents. And as we heard from Erika Kirk, his wife, on stage yesterday, she was advocating for love over hate. But then the president said he does hate his opponents and wants to go after them. And then on social media this weekend, we saw the president publicly call on Attorney General Pam Bondi to go after Democratic Senator Adam Schiff, former FBI Director James Comey, and New York Attorney General Letitia James, seeming to say that she should prosecute them, complaining that nothing's being done and that justice must be served. Now, in the same post, he also complained about former U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, Eric Siebert, who stepped down or was essentially ousted, facing intense pressure to bring charges against Letitia James. Now, interesting to note, in a second post, he went on to praise Attorney General Pam Bondi, saying she's doing a good job, noting that she's careful but smart. But, you know, legal experts, former prosecutors, they say that this apparent public pressure really undermines what's supposed to be the independence of the Department of Justice, Harold.
And President Trump continues to go after the media for critical coverage of him. I just want to play to our viewers what he said at the end of last week.
They'll take a great story and they'll make it bad. See, I think that's really illegal, personally.
So, of course, there is a First Amendment right to free speech, but what exactly is the president saying is illegal, in his words?
Well, Errol, you may remember he also, the day prior, had floated to reporters that, you know, he might revoke possibly licenses, FCC licenses, to broadcast TV stations. This comes as there's growing backlash over ABC's decision to indefinitely suspend Jimmy Kimmel's show and comments, apparent pressure by the FCC commissioner, Brendan Carr, who seemed to tell stations, put them on notice following Kimmel's comments. Now, critics say that this is an assault on on free speech. Even Republican Ted Cruz said that Carr's comments were, quote, dangerous as hell. And I want to read from you what the FCC's own website says, which is the First Amendment and the Communications Act expressly prohibit the commission from censoring broadcast matter. Our role in overseeing program content is very limited. Errol.
A very important note to highlight. Natalie, thank you. And Charlie Kirk's widow told a stadium full of people she forgives the person who shot and killed her husband. There was a huge memorial service yesterday in Arizona where several high-profile politicians spoke about the conservative activists. Chris Van Cleve was in the arena for the service, and he joins us now from Phoenix with more. Chris, what were your impressions of what you witnessed?
Well, Errol, Charlie Kirk could certainly be a polarizing political figure, but much of this memorial focused on his deep Christian beliefs, many of the speakers likening it to a religious revival. In an emotional tribute Sunday, Erika Kirk spoke of the devout Christian values she shared with her late husband, Charlie, and offered these words to his assassin.
On the cross, our Savior said, Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do. That man, that young man, I forgive him.
Now, the CEO of Turning Point USA, the conservative organization her husband founded, Kirk pledged to grow the movement and encouraged young people to step into their faith.
The answer to hate is not hate. The answer we know from the gospel is love, and always love.
Moments later, President Trump, the event's headlining speaker, struck a different tone.
That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent.
The president spoke on a wide range of topics for more than 40 minutes and called Kirk's death an attack on the entire nation.
The gun was pointed at him, but the bullet was aimed at all of us.
Several members of the president's inner circle and cabinet spoke Sunday as an overflowing crowd packed State Farm Stadium, the largest venue in Arizona, to celebrate Kirk's life.
Now, our whole administration is here, but not just because we love Charlie as a friend, even though we did, but because we know we wouldn't be here without him.
The 31-year-old Kirk's rise to prominence was fueled in part by his debates with students on college campuses across the country. He became a mainstay on the campaign trail and galvanized young people to vote for President Trump.
You know, I watch Charlie Kirk's videos pretty much every day.
Brittany Hegberg traveled to the memorial from Minnesota.
I thought that he really stood up for what he believed in, and I really admired that a lot, and I think the world needs more of that.
Kirk's positions were not without controversy, but his death sparked widespread outrage and heartbreak, and his allies said Sunday it had immortalized him.
You have no idea the dragon you have awakened. You have no idea how determined we will be to save this civilization, to save the West, to save this republic.
The memorial service was very much a call to action. In fact, there was an active voter registration drive happening as people were coming into the stadium or leaving the stadium. President Trump told those in attendance he plans to give Kirk the nation's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Errol?
All right, Chris Van Cleve in Phoenix for us. Thank you, Chris. Joel Payne and Leslie Sanchez are here for a look at the big picture. Joel is a CBS News political contributor and Democratic strategist, and Leslie is a CBS News political analyst and Republican strategist. Happy Monday to you both. Welcome. Leslie, what do you make of that contrast, you know, during what is such an emotionally volatile time for everyone in the country? Is it helpful for the president to rail against so-called enemies and confirm that he, in his words, hates them?
And I thought it was so appropriate. He called Charlie Kirk somebody who he was a missionary with a noble spirit. And I thought the tone in many ways was self-deprecating. He was saying that Charlie, you know, had a better stance and kind of an approach to the left than he did. He resorted to more name calling. It was more his style. But that it caused, I think, a moment of pause and reflection where people could come together. Look, the First Amendment doesn't guarantee political violence. It allows and guarantees ease, your ability to have a vigorous debate without fear. And I think that was what was reminded in the tone. It was very much like a revival, a coming together of this country, and we can spar in a very vigorous way, but there are measures where we all come together as Americans. And I think fundamentally that was the tone yesterday.
And Joel, what do you make of that, on this idea that there is space for vigorous debate and disagreement? What does this moment mean for Democrats and Republicans who are both, some of them, trying to work across party lines and nationally heal somewhat?
Yeah, we're in a moment where I think we're called on to rise above a bit and kind of reach down deep into understanding what it means for advanced citizenship in this country, which means holding a lot of complicated ideas at one time, and it's difficult. I do have a different opinion of the president's remarks than Leslie's. I think that what I heard was a president who used that moment to capitalize on some political advantage, who used it to further divide, to not bring down the temperature, when he, above all other persons, is the most important person to bring down the temperature. I was so deeply appreciative of Erika Kirk sharing her truth and sharing her values with the country, and I desperately wish that folks like Stephen Miller and Donald Trump Jr. and others would take her cue. And that is what is really troubling about this moment, is that the type of leadership that Erika Kirk spoke voice to yesterday is the type of leadership that we have a president who refuses to engage in, and that is a desperate moment for this democracy.
Well, we are seeing free speech itself being debated. We saw President Trump suggesting Friday it's somehow illegal for him to receive critical news coverage, which every president has suffered through, and Donald Trump himself, as a private citizen, was not above criticizing sitting presidents and their actions. So, Leslie, what responsibility do Republicans have to hold the president accountable here on this point?
There's a balance here, no doubt about that. Republicans don't want to overreach, and Democrats shouldn't want to underreact. And I think that's what the American public's looking for, is the sign that there can be measures to come together, that we can, as you talk about, vigorously debate these issues. Joel and I see that speech fundamentally differently, but we also know that history teaches us that with tragedy comes moments where people can come together, especially in Congress. You saw it after the Kennedy Association and passage of civil rights. After Watergate, they had reforms on ethics and campaign reform. And even after 9/11, Republicans and Democrats agreed on security measures. So there is a long-standing history where we can see this differently, and their criticisms are fair, and that is a historical trend. Presidents don't like to be criticized by the media. But legislatively, this country has risen above, and I think we will do that again.
And Joel, in our last few seconds, are Democrats united on their messaging on this right now?
Yeah, I'll get to that. Here's what we cannot see differently: free speech. It's something that this president promised on the campaign trail and has promised in previous public moments. His political movement has promised. The American people expect. The founders guaranteed. And I was disappointed to hear his attorney general speak so recklessly about speech in ways that would go against the values of Charlie Kirk, that go against the values of Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz. I think what Democrats have to do is fearlessly defend the right to free speech, free expression, freedom of assembly, and yes, make sure that as they are expressing those rights, those are done peacefully and in the interest of public safety. Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate you both bringing respectful debate and disagreement to our program. Joel Payne, Leslie Sanchez, thank you so much.